In this video, I will reveal many secrets of ancient Egypt. Do you know what Egyptian soldiers did after battle? The facts will surely shock you. The roar of battle subsides, and silence descends on the scorching sand, more deafening than any battle cry. For the ordinary Egyptian soldier, the end of the battle is not the end, but only the beginning of a new, difficult stage. Victory in ancient Egypt was not just an act of conquest, but also a sacred ritual requiring meticulous order and strict adherence to rules. We are accustomed to thinking of warriors through the prism of their valor in battle, but their lives after battle were filled with complex and mandatory procedures. The Egyptian army was not just a military force, but a well-oiled state mechanism. Every element, from a simple infantryman to a captured enemy, had to be accounted for, processed, and integrated into the system. We are presented with a picture of a world where logistics, religion, and medicine were inextricably linked. It was a world where counting trophies was as important as treating comrades. Watch the video to the end to learn what precise rituals were supposed to guarantee a soldier eternal life, even if he fell far from home. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of the Egyptian army. The first thing after the battle was not celebration, but total bureaucratic accounting. As soon as the sounds of battle subsided, scribes would come out onto the field with their pallets, papyrus scrolls, and ink. These people in simple linen clothes were no less important than the regimental commanders. They were the eyes and ears of the state, recording the outcome. Each unit commander was required to immediately report on the losses and the condition of his unit. The scribes meticulously recorded the number of survivors, the number of missing, and the number of those who needed medical attention. Parallel to the roll call, the accounting of captured items began. Special detachments collected all enemy equipment, shields, spears, bows, axes, and, most valuable of all, chariots. Every piece of weaponry and armor was considered the property of the pharaoh and was subject to strict accounting. Scribes compiled long lists, which would later form the basis of reports on the triumph. Then it was the turn of the prisoners. Enemy soldiers who had survived were gathered in one place, bound, and also carefully counted. Scribes noted their numbers and sometimes their presumed origin, if it was possible to determine. These people were no longer considered warriors. They became living trophies, a valuable resource for the Egyptian state.
We are defeated.
This administrative work could take many hours, and the soldiers had to wait patiently. They remained in formation or in their camp areas until the bureaucratic machine had completed its work. Discipline after the battle was as strict as during it? We are very interested in hearing your point of view. What do you think about such striking bureaucracy immediately after a heavy battle? Write about it in the comments. And be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss other exciting details from the lives of ancient civilizations.
Still, the pain will pass.
Are you ready to learn the truth about how advanced Egyptian medicine was on the battlefield? Immediately after the counting and sorting was completed, the doctors began their work. Egyptian medics, known as Senyu, possessed knowledge that was thousands of years ahead of its time. They acted quickly and methodically, using both practical and ritualistic methods of treatment. The first thing they did was sort the wounded. Soldiers with minor injuries were treated on the spot, while those in more serious condition were taken to specially erected camp tents. These tents served as makeshift field hospitals. Doctors examined each patient, determining the order and type of treatment required. One of the main tasks was to clean the wounds. The Egyptians understood the importance of hygiene, even though they did not know about microbes. Wounds were washed with clean water and sometimes with weak beer wort or wine, which had mild antiseptic properties. Then one of the main secret weapons of Egyptian medicine came into play: honey. Doctors generously coated the treated wounds with fresh honey. Today we know that honey has powerful natural antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties. In addition to honey, other natural remedies were also actively used. To relieve discomfort and reduce inflammation, compresses made from willow leaves, which contain salicylic acid, a natural analog of aspirin, were applied. Mint, acacia resin, and other herbs known for their healing properties were also used. After applying the medicine, the wound was carefully bandaged. Egypt was famous for its flax, and bandages made of thin, pure linen cloth were of the highest quality. Doctors skillfully applied bandages, securing the damaged areas and protecting them from the dirt and dust of the military camp. It was a complex and comprehensive system that combined rational observation and religious belief. For a soldier, this meant that he was cared for on all levels, physical and spiritual. In the next chapter, we will reveal the secrets of the magical amulets and ritual bandages that soldiers wore for protection.
Thoth guide my hands. May the Sekhmet watch over you, warrior. Be strong, be whole.
What you have never seen before, how magic and medicine in ancient Egypt worked as one. For an Egyptian soldier, healing was not just a physical process. Therefore, medical care was always complemented by powerful ritual support. The line between doctor and priest was almost indistinguishable. Every soldier carried amulets that were supposed to protect him in battle. The most common were the Ankh, a symbol of eternal life, and the Ujat, the sacred eye of the god Horus. It was believed that the eye of Horus possessed incredible healing powers and was capable of driving away evil spirits that cause illness and complications. After the battle, during treatment, these amulets took on special significance. A priest-doctor could charge the amulet by reciting special incantations from sacred texts over it. The amulet could be applied to a wound or woven into a bandage so that its protective power would work continuously, speeding up recovery.
Mistress of the two lands, hear my prayer.
The priest of the goddess Sekhmet played a special role. Sekhmet was a lion-headed goddess of war, fury, and disease, but she was also a great healer. It was believed that she was the one who sent afflictions, and only she could stop them. Therefore, after the battle, the priest turned to her with prayers and offerings to appease her and divert her wrath from the wounded warriors. The bandages themselves, which were applied to wounds, were not just pieces of cloth. Often they were strips of linen on which scribes had previously written short hymns or magic formulas in hieratic script. When such a bandage was wrapped around a wound, the writing was activated, creating an invisible barrier against evil forces.
Master of magic, let this balm mend the flesh.
The healing process was accompanied by recitation. The doctor did not work in silence. He uttered rhythmic incantations, addressing the gods of healing, such as Thoth, Isis, and Horus. These words were meant to drive away demons that could enter the body through an open wound.
Hail, Osiris. May you find peace in the afterlife.
What if everything you have been taught about Egyptian funerals applies only to pharaohs and nobles? The fate of a simple soldier who fell in battle was different, but no less important. For the Egyptians, the preservation of the body and proper funeral rites were absolutely necessary to achieve eternal life in the fields of Yalu. The main problem was death far from Egypt, in a foreign land. The ideal option was to return the body to its homeland, to its native village on the banks of the Nile, for burial in the family tomb. However, such transportation was a complex and expensive procedure. The bodies of high-ranking warriors underwent a simplified field embalming process. Special embalming priests who followed the army removed the internal organs and treated the body with natron salts to prevent rapid decomposition. The body was then wrapped in linen and sent to its homeland in a sealed sarcophagus. For ordinary soldiers, this practice was impossible. They were buried near the battlefield, but with all possible ritual respect. The Egyptians never left their fallen on the battlefield to be desecrated. Mass graves were often created for fallen soldiers. These could be large communal graves dug in the sand. But even in this case, key rituals were observed. The bodies were laid out in a specific order, usually with their heads facing in one direction, imitating the position of a sleeping person ready for rebirth. Even the poorest soldier did not go to the afterlife empty-handed. A minimal set of burial items was placed in the grave with him. Usually this was a small clay jug with water or beer and a few pieces of bread.
Receive this bread and beer, O Blessed One. May your car find sustenance on the journey to the afterlife. We thank the great gods for this victory. Accept this offering.
After the
and
wounded
grant
had been
your
helped and the
eternal
fallen had
favor
been
to
laid to
the
rest with honor, it was time for the most important thing, giving thanks to the gods. In the worldview of the ancient Egyptians,
We offer
victory
this
was never
incense,
solely a human achievement.
recognizing that your
It was a
favor
gift
is
from the
the true
gods, a
source of our
manifestation of their
strength
favor
and
toward the
victory.
Pharaoh in Egypt. The central figure in this process was, of course, the Pharaoh himself or his senior military commanders acting on his behalf. They presided over solemn religious ceremonies that were held right in the military camp. For this purpose, a temporary field temple or altar was erected. The main god who was thanked for the victory was Amun-Ra, king of the gods and patron of Thebes. From the New Kingdom period onwards, he became the chief state deity and was considered the father of the Pharaoh, granting him the power to defeat his enemies. The richest sacrifices were made to him. Some of the captured trophies were immediately dedicated to the gods. Gold, silver, valuable weapons, and livestock were separated from the general spoils and declared property of the temple. This was not just a donation. The warriors also praised Montu, the ancient god of war with the head of a falcon. Montu personified military valor, physical strength, and fury in battle. However, there were deities who needed to be appeased rather than thanked. Chief among them was Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess. The Egyptians believed that it was her uncontrollable fury that inspired warriors in battle. Now that the battle was over, she had to be appeased so that her wrath would not turn against the Egyptians themselves in the form of disease or misfortune. Guess what happened when the victorious army returned to the capital, for example, to Thebes or Ramses? The greatest spectacle of ancient Egypt began, the triumphal procession. This was not just the return of soldiers home, but a large-scale political and religious event designed to demonstrate the power of the Pharaoh and the mercy of the gods. The journey home could take weeks. The army moved in organized columns, carrying the banners of their regiments and images of their patron gods. The soldiers were no longer exhausted from battle. They were cleansed, dressed in their best clothes and full of pride. Upon entering the capital, they were greeted by cheering crowds. The inhabitants of the cities took to the streets, threw flowers, and played musical instruments. It was a national holiday. Artists and scribes prepared the city for this event in advance, decorating the streets and creating laudatory inscriptions. The procession had a strict order. At the front, they carried the enemy's captured banners, proving the complete defeat of the enemy. They were followed by groups of musicians playing trumpets, drums, and flutes. Then came the main proof of victory, the trophies. Soldiers led a huge number of captured livestock, oxen, goats, and sheep. Behind them were carts loaded to the brim with the most valuable items, gold and silver vessels, exotic woods. The most spectacular and at the same time gloomy part of the procession was the column of prisoners. They were led bound, often tied together with ropes. It was a vivid demonstration of the fate of those who dared to challenge Egypt. Captured leaders and nobles walked separately, representing special value. This triumph was necessary to maintain stability in the state. It demonstrated to everyone, from simple peasants to foreign ambassadors, the immutability of the Pharaoh's power and the invincibility of the Egyptian army. And for the soldiers, it was the highest reward for all their hardships. But what happened to all this untold booty? In the next chapter, we will delve into the complex bureaucracy of dividing the spoils.
20 jars of oil, 50 deben of gold rings. Ensure the bronze is weighed separately.
Next soldier, your share is recorded here.
10
After
deben
the
of silver
trumpets of
and
triumph
1
had
chopesh
sounded
blade.
and the Pharaoh had
Recorded,
made
Commander.
offerings to the gods, the most prosaic but critically important stage began, the division of the spoils. This process was no less regulated than the battle itself. Egyptian civilization was built on record-keeping, and military trophies were no exception. All the captured spoils, which were displayed during the procession, were taken to special storage facilities. Senior state officials, the vizier, Dur Chati, and the chief treasurer were responsible for recording and distributing them. They acted on behalf of the pharaoh Once again, it was time for the scribes to get to work. Dozens, even hundreds of officials with papyrus scrolls and pallets set about making a detailed inventory. They counted literally everything: every gold bar, every copper cauldron, every head of cattle, every weapon captured. This process could take several days. The distribution system was hierarchical. The first and largest share, the Pharaoh's share, went directly to the state treasury. These funds were used to finance new construction projects. The second significant portion, the share of the gods, was transferred to the temples. The main recipient was the temple of Amun-Ra in Karnak, but other important religious centers also received their share. These riches were used by priests to perform rituals, maintain the temple economy, and further strengthen their influence. Only after the state and temples had received their share was the rest of the spoils distributed among the soldiers. This process was strictly proportional to rank and merit. The highest-ranking commanders received the lion's share: land, slaves, gold. Ordinary soldiers were not left out either. Their share was more modest, but still substantial. It could be a few head of cattle, weapons, pieces of cloth, or copper utensils. For a peasant who formed the backbone of the army, this was considerable wealth, worth risking one's life for. We have already mentioned the prisoners who were led in a triumphal procession, but what was their fate? After they were counted and presented to the people, their lives entered a new, unenviable phase. In the ancient world, prisoners were not considered people with rights, but part of the spoils of war, a living resource. Their fate depended entirely on the will of the pharaoh and the needs of the state. There was no single approach, and the fate of prisoners could vary. However, they were almost never released or integrated into society as equals. They became the property of the state. A significant portion of prisoners, especially strong and resilient men, were sent to do public works. Egyptian civilization was a civilization of great construction projects. Prisoners became the main labor force in quarries, where they mined granite and limestone. They were also used in the construction of temples, palaces, and military fortresses. This influx of free labor after each successful campaign allowed Egypt to maintain an incredible pace of monumental construction, especially during the New Kingdom period. It was the economic basis for many architectural masterpieces. A large number of prisoners were also transferred to the ownership of temples. They became servants of God, but in practice this meant that they worked on the vast temple lands, cultivating fields, tending livestock, or working in craft workshops belonging to the priests. The fate of captured chiefs and nobles was different. They were not mixed with ordinary soldiers. Sometimes they were kept as valuable hostages to ensure the obedience of their tribes. In other cases, they could be kept at the pharaoh's court as an exotic curiosity. Immediately after his return, the pharaoh instructed his architects and scribes to begin work on a monumental report. The victory had to be carved in stone on the walls of great temples, such as Karnak or Luxor, or on special commemorative steles that were erected on the borders of the empire. This process was complex and multi-stage. First, court scribes and chroniclers compiled an official version of events. They relied on reports from commanders, lists of trophies, and prisoners. This version, of course, was not an objective chronicle, but a propaganda text. In these texts, the pharaoh always appeared as the main character. He was described as a mighty warrior, single-handedly crushing hordes of enemies. His strength was compared to the fury of a bull, and his accuracy to that of the falcon god Horus himself. The role of ordinary soldiers and even generals was usually downplayed. Then artists and sculptors took up the task. They transferred this narrative onto stone. Battle scenes were carved on the giant pylons of temples. The pharaoh was depicted dozens of times larger than the other figures, towering above the chaos of battle on his chariot. These reliefs are full of detail. We see scenes of sieges, chariot battles, and the counting of trophies. Artists meticulously depicted the type of weapons, clothing, and even the ethnic features of the defeated enemies. It was a visual aid to imperial power. In addition to the images, the walls were covered with kilometers of hieroglyphic texts. These inscriptions listed the conquered cities, provided lists of tribute brought, the number of prisoners, and praised the pharaoh. It was an eternal report addressed not only to the people, but also to the gods. Such stone chronicles had several purposes. First, it was propaganda, instilling in subjects and foreign ambassadors the idea of Egypt's invincibility. Second, it was an act of piety. The pharaoh was, as it were, reporting to the gods on how he was fulfilling his mission to maintain Maat. Third, it was a guarantee of eternal life for the pharaoh himself. According to Egyptian beliefs, names and deeds carved in stone ensured their eternal existence. As long as the inscription exists, the memory of the victory also exists. It is thanks to these monumental reliefs and steles that we know so much today about the military campaigns of Thutmose III, Seti I, and Ramses I. Although these texts embellish reality, thus a battle that lasted only one day was turned into an eternal monument. The work of the scribe and the stonemason completed what the soldier had begun. Victory became not just a fact of the past, but an integral part of the sacred history of Egypt. Once the triumph had been celebrated, the trophies divided, and the chronicles recorded in stone, it was time for most of the soldiers to be demobilized. The Egyptian army, especially in earlier periods, was not always entirely professional. A significant portion of it consisted of militiamen recruited for a specific military campaign. The return of a veteran to his native village was a big event. He did not return empty-handed. The share of the spoils he received, whether cattle, copper, or grain, was a serious help to his family. He returned as a hero, a man who had seen distant lands and fought for the pharaoh. The state encouraged veterans. For his merits in battle, a simple soldier could receive not only gold of courage, but also more practical rewards. The most desirable of these was a plot of land. The pharaoh could grant a distinguished veteran a plot of arable land, free from certain taxes. This was an incredibly wise decision. First, it created a class of loyal landowners who owed their prosperity personally to the pharaoh. Second, it provided veterans and their families with a decent life. Third, it motivated other young people to serve in the army.
Pharaoh's wisdom is why our fields are so bountiful, my son. We owe everything to his divine guidance.
From the New Kingdom period onwards, the situation began to change. Egypt was engaged in almost continuous warfare and maintained huge garrisons in Nubia and Syria. This led to the creation of a permanent professional army. For these soldiers, after the battle, did not mean demobilization, but a return to the barracks. The life of a professional soldier was different. They lived in military garrisons, trained constantly, stood guard duty, and prepared for the next campaign. Their rewards were regular pay in the form of grain, beer, cloth, and other supplies.
Receive this incense, eternal ones.
We see that the end of battle for an Egyptian soldier was only the beginning of a complex and orderly chain of events. It was a world where bureaucracy was inextricably linked to religion and medicine to magic. The Egyptian military machine was effective not only on the battlefield. What other aspects of life in ancient Egypt or the history of other ancient civilizations would you like us to cover? Perhaps you are interested in the daily life of pyramid builders or the mysteries of priestly cults. Suggest topics for future videos in the comments. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new exciting dives into the past.